He's a good guy, and we have a great understanding of each other. We're great friends.
Dolly Parton has recently lifted the curtain on Carl Dean's almost 60-year-old mystery, and the reality isn't quite as endearing as everyone thought. An apparently perfect marriage, a love that has stood the test of time. However, hidden behind the glittering lights and beyond the saccharine tunes are hitherto undisclosed dark regions. Even more shocking than the fact that Carl Dean isn't the guy everyone imagined? Even Dolly Parton herself revealed more. We don't know why Carl Dean disappeared from view. Was he really the doting spouse that everyone thought he was? Can even Dolly's devoted followers not bear the harshness of reality? Secrets that have been kept hidden, promises that have been broken, and a reality that not even Dolly can hide. Dolly Parton's unique voice, colorful manner, and recognizable attitude have made her one of the most luminous country music legends in America for over 50 years. Every country music fan knows her name. However, the general population has never fully resolved one question. Exactly who is the mysterious man responsible for Dolly's radiant smile? Carl Dean, the man. They were married in 1966, at the beginning of Dolly's career, and managed to remain together for over 60 years, which is an incredible achievement in the incredibly seductive world of show business. Carl Dean, on the other hand, has hardly ever been in the spotlight. Nobody knows how many official images of him that exist from different decades, and he didn't even show up to any of Dolly's award ceremonies or huge concerts. Why, with a wife known all over the globe, would Carl Dean want to keep mum? With aspirations of becoming a famous singer, 18-year-old Dolly Parton landed in Nashville in 1964. She had big dreams when she was younger, but she wasn't a famous actress. Later on, she was guided to Carl Dean by fate. Their odd meeting outside the vacuous laundromat was the catalyst for a love that would last a lifetime. Carl, who was 21 years old at the time, was completely enchanted by the sunny-faced blonde. He famously declared, "The day my life began upon meeting Dolly." However, Carl was not the kind to flaunt his devotion in public, contrary to the image of a daring Southern gentleman. He chose to be silent and unwavering in his expression of love. Carl was attractive to Dolly as well, albeit she took her time. Dating an unknown man was more of a challenge for young women back then. After meeting for a week on her aunt's porch, Dolly finally consented to a private excursion. A heartfelt tale of love, albeit basic, took root there. Even though he had feelings for a driven singer, Carl had no desire to be a part of Dolly Parton's glamorous lifestyle. In contrast to his wife's dazzling singing career, he managed a road paving firm. Uninvolved but supportive, Carl waited patiently behind Dolly as she knocked on record label doors. "While he loves me very much," Dolly said to Variety that Carl isn't particularly fond of her singing voice, suggesting that he has his own musical interests. Carl Dean remained true to his word during Dolly's golden years. He avoided the limelight. Carl chose to remain at home instead of joining Dolly when she received several significant accolades, such as Grammys and CMAs. Carl made an unusual exception for a big event, the BMI Song of the Year ceremony, by attending. He made it clear after only one night that he will never attend another one of these events. That choice was respected by Dolly. Carl was not the kind to seek out attention, stardom, or parties. He was just a regular guy who fell head over heels for a remarkable woman. Is it true that their marriage lasted over 60 years because of this distance? It's obvious that their friendship was strengthened by Carl's decision to avoid attention. Both the media and the general public refrained from inquiring into their personal lives. But that brings up a different idea. Did Carl find true happiness playing the role of the shadow man? Although Carl was proud of Dolly's accomplishments, he never liked her music, as she revealed to Dolly once. Even still, rumors have it that Carl occasionally felt lonely while Dolly toured nonstop. Their early hopes for a modest family were crushed when Dolly's health condition prevented them from achieving that ambition. This sent Dolly into a tailspin of intense emotions, but Carl was there to help her recover. But where does Carl stand? As Dolly's career took off, Carl may have felt ignored, according to some reports. He enjoyed a low-key life in Nashville while she wowed the world. While avoiding the mayhem of Hollywood, they made time for one another by taking RV travels. Is it sufficient, though? Carl disappeared even further from visibility in his latter years. Dolly reduced her workload so she could be by his side when his health declined. However, no images or updates on Carl appeared, even as his condition worsened. There was no public funeral or outcry of sorrow from the music industry when Dolly revealed Carl's passing on March 3rd. The events transpired in complete quiet, mirroring Carl's lifelong habit. Carl Dean is still one of the most enigmatic characters in Hollywood. Without seeking or receiving anyone's approval, he silently loves Dolly in his own way. What was life like behind the scenes, though, given the level of secrecy? Is there more to this 59-year union than meets the eye? A mystery remains about Carl, the guy Dolly has repeatedly described as her ideal partner. Was his self-esteem the same? Despite sharing 59 years of life, Carl Dean and Dolly Parton couldn't have been more different. On stage, one wowed with her dazzling costumes and mesmerizing vocals. With their backs to the camera, the other one stood silently on the side. Their love remained strong for decades despite the rift. There were times when that love was devoid of happiness. Amidst the glitz and glamour, the isolation and victory, the loss and triumph, they endured unseen sufferings. Dolly and Carl were just like any other couple when they were married. They wanted a small house in Nashville, some children to play outside, and a peaceful existence. On the other hand, Dolly's career took off. She rose quickly from the ranks of a teenage vocalist with modest ambitions to become a beloved country artist throughout the world. Dolly was ripped away from the idyllic nest she had once imagined by her jam-packed schedule, never-ending tours, and spectacular concert nights. In contrast, Carl was never one to seek attention. He wanted to live in tranquility, away from the infamous storms. I stayed home and took care of the basic pleasures while Dolly flew around performing. An old vehicle, some dogs, and a garden. He supposedly loved Dolly in his own special way, not so much that she knew, but enough that she knew. However, was Dolly ever left feeling lonely by that love? When Dolly was at the height of her career, she freely acknowledged that she couldn't devote much time to Carl. While she is married to Carl, her music is her true love, she once claimed. Perhaps the biggest irony in their marriage is this. Love remained, but so did the physical separation. No one dared to highlight the gap that was created by undetected fissures. Never having children is one of Dolly Parton's biggest regrets. When she and Carl were younger, they dreamed of having a family and having tiny children run about their yard. The 1980s, however, were a devastating decade. Dolly was afflicted with the painful ailment known as endometriosis, which rendered her infertile. She had a hysterectomy, putting an end to her desire to become a mother, after suffering through severe pain. This was horrible news for a lady who desperately needed a family and loved ones. The difficult days following surgery came back to her later. For me, it was a terrible period. I fell into a profound melancholy. A painful emptiness was left in her soul in addition to the tangible loss. Dolly struggled with the darkest thoughts and plunged into misery for a long time. How did Carl figure into this? Those who knew Dolly best attest that Carl, in his own subtle manner, was her rock. No inspirational speeches, no Hollywood romance. He opted to stay by and let Dolly recuperate on her own. Dolly discovered new meaning after years of struggling with loss. Through her imagination library, which she generously donated to children, she spent a lot of time helping those in need. Though she did not physically give birth to any children, she fulfilled her family's desire by caring for many youngsters all throughout the United States. Carl Dean avoided the spotlight at all costs, yet in his latter years, he suffered unmasked agony. With the onset of a neurological disease, he began to lose his memory. After decades of protecting his privacy, Carl suddenly faced a harsh reality. Even his wife, who had been by his side for over 60 years, was slipping his mind. Insiders knew that Dolly gave a lot to care for Carl, but she never talked about his condition publicly. Lessening her workload, she turned down major projects and spent more time at home. "He's the same on the inside, and I'll remain at his side no matter what," she promised. Watching the one you love forget you is the worst kind of sorrow, though. Dolly had become accustomed to Carl's reclusiveness as a result of his decision to remain hidden for so long. This schism, however, was distinct not because he wanted it to be, but because he just couldn't remember. Memories of shared joy and tender times are slipping away. This could be the worst tragedy that a lady who has sang about love her whole life has ever experienced. In the 60 years that he was married, Carl Dean was never what society considered to be an average spouse. No pretense, no mushy language, and certainly no grandiose romanticism. His love for Dolly was unassuming and unwavering, and he never felt the need to prove it to anybody. Maybe that's the secret to their long-lasting love. Hollywood seldom tells stories about marriages like the one between Dolly Parton and Carl Dean, a realm of seduction and delicate relationships. Tragedies and setbacks were inevitable, as they are in any great love story. Despite the personal sacrifices she made, Dolly's job propelled her to heights few achieve. The applause dies down as the stage lights go down. Love is all that's left. Love that is unassuming, that doesn't want approval, and that remains long after all else fades from memory. Even though Carl has forgotten a lot, the world will never forget the love he had for Dolly and the affection she had for him over the course of over 60 years. The news that Dolly Parton had confirmed Carl Dean's passing sent shockwaves throughout the globe on March 3rd. What shocked folks the most, though? It wasn't the loss itself that was tragic, rather, it was the manner in which it occurred silently, without ceremony, with only a short note from Dolly. Carl Dean and Marilyn Monroe were the most enigmatic couple in Hollywood for over 60 years. He was never the kind to seek limelight or accompany Dolly at red carpet events. He opted for complete quietness even as he departed from this realm. However, in Carl Dean's last days, what actually transpired? Was the Dolly Parton woman, revered all around the world, there in his final moments, seeing his unending love? Dolly Parton's stardom cast a shadow on Carl Dean's life. In contrast to the Hollywood ideal of a husband, he never took her on fancy dates, showed her excessive devotion, or even showed up for her milestone events. He still loved her, though. Maybe it was love that held him back, allowing Dolly to radiate uninhibitedly. Even more subtly than he had lived, Carl Dean departed when the moment came to say goodbye. No famous people showed up to grieve at the modest funeral. There was no emotional Dolly speech that went viral. His last remaining photos were never seen by the public. A little parting message from Dolly Parton, both reassuring and mysterious. Though he is no longer physically here, my spouse Carl will live on in my memories. It was that. After a lifetime of avoiding the limelight, a man passed away, leaving his wife with nothing except memories. However, several inquiries were provoked by that lack of sound. When will there be a funeral? Why was the state of Carl's health during his latter years so mysterious? Did Dolly really see him go by, or was she too preoccupied with her job to pay attention? In his latter years, Carl Dean fought a secret but hard fight, according to those close to him. Cognitive decline. What formerly meant the most gets erased by this sickness, not only memory. Although Dolly Parton never said anything about it publicly, there are indications that she took care of him discreetly for a long time. She has been staying home more recently, cutting tours and passing on major projects. So says Carl's circle of friends. Never before had he been so reliant on her. Yet Alzheimer's disease is brutal. It hurts the sick and the people who are close to them. The man who had been hiding behind Dolly's radiance, Carl Dean, suddenly couldn't even remember her name. I think that was Dolly Parton's worst hurt. As well as being my partner in love, he was my best friend. After a while, he began to forget things. To start, the little details. We move on to more significant matters. Then he began to lose track of my existence. Nothing breaks a woman's heart more than witnessing her loved ones abandon her after all the songs she's sung about love her whole life. According to several sources, Dolly Parton tried her best to be there for Carl at all times, but she was unable to do so. She couldn't let her profession and responsibilities go. Supposedly, Carl Dean passed away on one of the days she had to depart. This fact raises an inquiry. Carl Dean, has he ever left this earth by himself? Was Dolly, who referred to Carl as her greatest love, there when he took his last breath? There is no way to know for sure. It's never been brought up by Dolly. After protecting their marriage with quiet for 60 years, she continues to do so now. No matter what transpired, one thing is evident. Carl Dean had her undivided affection. Although many were taken aback by Carl Dean's unannounced departure, his friends and family understood. That is his desire. Carl despised being the center of attention. He preferred not to have public expressions of grief for a man he had never met covered in tabloids. As he had lived, all he wanted was to pass away gently. After performing for millions of people, Dolly Parton probably realized that love isn't something to flaunt. Memories, time spent together, and elaborate funerals don't always take center stage. He liked to keep things low-key. I honored his desires since he never liked to be the focus of attention. Thus, Carl Dean quietly departed, making little impression on the world. He remains, nevertheless, for Dolly Parton. She wrote enduring love songs about him, the guy she loved for over 60 years. No matter how quickly the world forgets Carl Dean, the specter of a legend, he will always be a beacon of light to Dolly. Even when the one you love forgets you, you may still feel their love since true love doesn't require proof. Carl Dean was originally promised by Dolly Parton a quiet existence away from the hustle and bustle of Hollywood, complete with a loving house and family. At the age of 21, when love was paramount and all else seemed insignificant, this promise was made. Over the years, though, as Dolly rose to stardom and Carl remained in the background, that promise seemed more and more distant. At any point did Carl feel abandoned? Did he ever spend a lonely night wondering where he belonged in Dolly's life? Was that old vow still on his mind when the sickness hit and his memory began to fade? Or was it all a haze caused by Alzheimer's disease? It was 1964 when Carl Dean and Dolly Parton first crossed paths. She was a youthful idealist and he was an unassuming peacenik. He had no desire for the spotlight of the stage or the glitz of Hollywood. At their 1966 wedding, they promised each other a quiet future, free from the pressures of celebrity and a life lived as any other couple could. However, Dolly Parton was never meant to be tranquil. The trajectory of her career skyrocketed. Not only were her songs popular, but they also became the music of a whole generation. She amassed an entertainment empire while touring the world and appearing on television and in films. With time, the allure of ease became illusory. Carl Dean, who disliked being seen, took a step back. He avoided major events, didn't accompany Dolly on her tours, and almost disappeared. Word on the street was that he despised her profession and felt neglected since she prioritized her job above her family. Carl, however, remained silent. Never was he one to complain. His adored wife shined brightly beyond him, and he lived a calm existence. Dolly Parton and Carl Dean were married for over 60 years, yet they rarely appeared in public together. Unlike other celebrity couples, they did not exchange media plaudits, pose for pleasant family photos in magazines, or hold hands on the red carpet. As a result, speculation ran rampant. For some, marriage was more like a long-term contract. According to others around him, Carl was unhappy since he never really had Dolly and spent his life hoping for her to come back. Even while things probably weren't that bad, Carl was definitely lonely. As Dolly Parton's husband suffered from Alzheimer's disease and his memories began to fade, she was well into her career. She was a living icon who performed on stages and donated to admirers. Carl Dean, who had been her entire universe before, was now completely oblivious. Dolly probably realized time was running out at some point. Despite her long-term dedication to her job, her spouse knew she couldn't keep going indefinitely. Thus, she halted. Concerts by Dolly Parton were cancelled. Her workload was reduced. In his waning years, she devoted more time to caring for Carl. According to those in the know, she did all she could to make up, including spending time with him, reading to him, singing to him, and doing her best to keep him rooted in her world. However, when it comes to Alzheimer's, nothing works. Bit by bit, Carl Dean slipped his mind. Depending on the day, he knew Dolly or he didn't. Tragically, he may have gone on without remembering that the woman standing next to him was the love of his life. Time was running away from me, no matter how hard I tried to keep my word. Dolly Parton tried her best to make amends, but some losses are irretrievable. Has Dolly Parton ever felt remorse? Probably, yeah. Carl Dean was the one man she loved deeply, but she feels guilty that she failed him by not being there for him when he needed her most. She had poured her heart and soul into the present in an attempt to fix the past, but she can't change the past. Has Carl Dean ever held her responsible? Very unlikely. He was always respectful and never wanted anything more than her affection. Even though his thoughts were consumed by his illness, he may have sensed, in some way, that she had always loved him. Carl Dean may be gone, but their love will live on. Not in magazine photos or in a Hollywood romance, but in the songs that Dolly played for the rest of her life. For the benefit of her admirers as well as the man who meant the world to her. While she may not have completely adhered to that early promise, she tried her best. To the best of her ability, she loved Carl Dean with her whole being. Carl Dean was virtually unheard of in the entertainment industry for nearly 60 years. married to a towering star, yet nobody knew him as a guy. There have been zero red carpets, major events, interviews, or public sightings. Is a man's decision to live alone for 60 years just a personal preference or a mystery waiting to be solved? What, more importantly, was Carl Dean trying to hide? Carl Dean's unusual absence from Dolly Parton's crucial times is the most peculiar thing about him. At big events, big musicians frequently bring their wives, who are often integral parts of their journey to fame. But there was always something lacking from Dolly Parton's performances. Carl Dean, the man. Dolly never had Carl at her side when she received accolades for her singing, attended extravagant galas, or won Grammys. No sweet public moments, no shared interviews, no images taken together. People started to question if Carl Dean was real or only a moniker in Dolly's biography. It was obvious that Carl existed, but why was he hiding so well? A guy evading the press for a long time piques interest. Many hypotheses attempted to explain Carl Dean's absence throughout the years. Confidentiality was important to Carl. Did he have a secret to conceal? Carl Dean, according to some, wasn't only timid. Maybe he had a secret background he didn't want anybody to know about. Some speculated that he had a double life, hiding his marital status from the public eye. Understandably, there is no evidence to support this. That being said, Carl's enigma allowed for the propagation of such stories. Was there any animosity from Carl towards Dolly Parton's fame that he kept hidden? Carl Dean, according to some, was never completely supportive of Dolly's career, not out of envy but more a distaste to the limelight. Carl, according to Dolly, never even listened to her music or saw her TV commercials. It can indicate his preference for solitude or his distaste for her profession. Who knows? Maybe in 1964 he had feelings for a dreamer who would go on to become a legend. Their chasm became wider as a result. Did Dolly cover up Carl's illness when he was first sick? Dolly may have protected Carl from prying eyes while he was sick a long time ago, according to another theory. It may have begun much earlier, but we did not hear about his Alzheimer's until much later. Maybe it wasn't a lack of desire but rather an incapacity to be seen that made him remain hidden. Dolly Parton has an unyielding spirit. She kept Carl's private life under wraps at all times. She would have kept silent if he had been sick for a long time. Dolly Parton never gave a satisfactory explanation for Carl Dean's withdrawn behavior during her career. Her only remark was that he preferred his alone, didn't care much about stardom, and yearned for an ordinary existence. But how could anybody have known that a guy could disappear from public view for 60 years just by avoiding scrutiny? Perhaps Dolly also maintained her promise to Carl, who asked her not to divulge too many details about him. Perhaps she has secrets she would like keep hidden. Perhaps Carl Dean departed without disclosing his secrets, therefore leaving us with an unanswered question. He wasn't looking for stardom, Carl Dean. He did not leave any recordings of his life's work, interviews, or songs for future generations to study. But he remains an essential part of Dolly Parton's legacy. Her undiscovered dreamer days were the days he adored her. Despite the world's expectations, he stood by her side. He's the one Dolly loved all her life and the one she sang about in her songs. Regardless of the truths or lies that Carl Dean may have said, one thing is certain, he was Dolly Parton's greatest love. I think that's the most important thing. The enigma of Carl Dean's life persists even after his death. An almost unknown guy for 50 years, a marriage between two of the most bizarre figures in show business, and an unfathomably long-distance love. Dolly Parton has always kept a low profile. Nobody is forcing her to. People are starting to worry if she will ever reveal their true tale now that Carl is gone. Is it going to emerge from hiding or remain a mystery forever? Dolly Parton was a master of public dazzling but a ferocious guardian of her private life. When people would ask her about Carl Dean, she would respond with a smile that he isn't into the entertainment industry. If it's simply a dislike of fame, then why disappear for decades? Nothing at all, no interviews, no brief appearances, no statements from him directly? Were Carl's requests to Dolly to keep him covered up? On the other hand, is there something she's hiding about this man for her own reasons? More important. Look who's gone. Does Dolly intend to keep everything secret? Secrets are easier to conceal in conversation for a lyricist like Dolly Parton than in her songs. How many of her hundreds of songs actually mention Carl Dean? There are those who think that From Here to the Moon and Back is one of her most heartfelt tributes to Carl. I could express my love for you by spreading my arms wide. How long will my love for you last? I could tell you right now. I could be there for you, telling you the truth. I could go on and on about how much I love you. The words echo a heartfelt confession, a solemn vow, and a love that has endured for a long time. If it is indeed the whole truth, then why did Carl never fully immerse himself in Dolly's life? According to urban legend, Dolly composed separation's ache songs at those times when she felt isolated and alone. Why hasn't she spoken up about how her saddest songs are missing parts of their love story? Dolly Parton's inaction toward Carl Dean, an alternate explanation. Perhaps she had vowed to him that she would never lie to him. Dolly lives up to her promises. Even when he leaves, she will not betray Carl's pleading for her to keep him at arm's length. So now we know why Dolly remains mum. The public wants answers, but she won't provide them. She may never let anyone else in on that secret. As she approaches the age of 80, Dolly Parton remains a towering American music legend, full of life, composing, and performing. She may or may not write a memoir to reveal Carl Dean's reality in the future. The best stories are often the ones nobody tells. It doesn't matter if their marriage was filled with pleasure or concealed suffering, what matters is that Carl hid something. Perhaps the most important thing is that they loved one another in their own unique ways. Carl Dean has gone away, but nobody knows what happened to him. No matter how long Dolly remains mute, people will never stop asking. What transpired, exactly, and will Dolly ever have the courage to reveal the truth?